All right. It's so nice to be around other people who are as passionate and also nerdy about modular blockchains as I am and as our team is. And it's also really humbling to have seen the growth of the modular ecosystem in the last year since the first Modular Summit. And it's all thanks to you guys out there in the audience, the builders and the believers who are turning the vision of modular blockchains into reality, day by day, by building all of this stuff. So today my talk is going to be about light nodes. So, if you're on Twitter in the last few months, you may have seen a bunch of these memes circulating. People were joking about running Celestia light nodes in the club or on their COVID test, and there were just Twitter for like a few days was just filled with all these memes about Celestia light nodes. And honestly, it was hilarious. It was awesome. I was stoked. I'm glad that the community was embracing light nodes, but at the same time, I had a little fear that people were going to miss the deep significance behind light nodes, what they represent. Light nodes are not just a meme, they're actually a movement, and they're crucial to the success of modular blockchains, and therefore to crypto, and also, therefore, to the future of mankind. And to explain why I'm saying that, we have to cover some first principles and kind of get really high level for a second. So I love this quote by Yuval Noah Harari in the book Sapiens. He says that humans have the unprecedented ability to cooperate flexibly in large numbers. And this is something that you might not think about on a daily basis, but if you were alone as a single human, there's not much that you could do. You probably wouldn't even survive that long. But when we get together in groups and we cooperate, we're able to achieve some pretty incredible things. And this is a feature of human beings that really sets us apart as a species and makes us as successful as we are today. One way to think about this, like a good analogy, is the difference between like a single-celled bacterium and a multicellular organism like a human being itself. So when cells in biology get together and cooperate, they're able to build much more powerful, complex things. And the same is true for human beings. So in nature, human beings can't actually cooperate in group sizes above 150, which is the so-called Dunbar number. And this brings us to a really important concept, which we're going to be talking about for the rest of this presentation, which is this notion of social scalability. So within any given system of cooperation, there's a limit to the maximum group size that it can support. And one of the really cool sort of arcs of history has been that over time, human beings have been able to transcend this Dunbar number and continuously find systems where they can cooperate in larger and larger groups. And with each time that we're able to innovate and sort of take the step towards larger scale cooperation and coordination, we have an increase in prosperity and all these big benefits to everyone. And so, in ancient times or prehistory, we would collaborate in the sizes of on the order of magnitude of a few hundred people, like tribes. And then as things got more advanced and we had more systems of cooperation, we could cooperate at the scale of city-states, tens of thousands or maybe 100,000 people. And in modern times, we are cooperating at the scale of nation-states, so millions, tens of millions, sometimes hundreds, or even in some cases a billion people within a nation. And this has kind of been this arc of progress for humanity. And so now I want to talk a bit about like how does our current technology or systems of cooperation work? So the way that they currently work is, everyone starts out with a set of rules. It's like laws. It's like the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the bylaws of a corporation. You have a set of rules that everyone that's in the system is agreeing to follow, right? And this sort of sets the ground rules. But unfortunately, it doesn't end there because you can't just trust everyone else to actually follow the rules as they're written. So you need some way of enforcing the rules. So in lots of our current systems, you have to empower a person or a group of people to be the rulers or they're given a special power that they get to enforce the rules on everyone else. And this works, but it comes with a really deep flaw. And that flaw is summed up in this question: who watches the watchmen? In other words, who is actually enforcing the rules on the enforcers? And the answer is really no one is. You're just trusting them. And the problem with that is that they often have an incentive to cheat, and that's what corruption is. That's what fraud is when the watchmen are not actually being watched, and they go off and do their own thing. And so this is a really deep problem in our current systems of cooperation. And we got a really timely reminder of that last year with what happened with FTX, unfortunately. And although a lot of people interpreted FTX as an example of why crypto is broken, it's actually the exact opposite. It's an example of why we need to build better systems of cooperation and build blockchains and decentralize things. And that is really core to this whole space, is this idea that trust doesn't scale, or at least trust in other human beings to be honest is not a scalable form of cooperation. And so that's why in blockchain space, we use these words constantly: trust minimized, trustless, decentralized. All these things are pointing towards the fact that the problem that blockchains are trying to solve is we're trying to remove trust from our systems of cooperation, because trust represents a vulnerability, like a weak point that can be exploited. And if we want to achieve a greater degree of social scalability, we need to find something better. And the answer is trusting in cryptography rather than other people. And so how do blockchains work? How are they different to our legacy forms of cooperation? Well, they start with a set of rules, just like the previous example. And oftentimes this is called like a social contract. But instead of having a particular group or individual who gets empowered to enforce the rules on everyone else, it's actually the people, the users of the blockchain, that enforce the rules directly. And so you'll notice that there isn't this sort of like power hierarchy. It's kind of like a direct relationship between the people and the rules. And this is really powerful. And unfortunately, a lot of people map the old mental model of cooperation onto blockchains, and they assume that, it's the validators who are given this privilege. They get to enforce the rules. They're like the new rulers in this blockchain-based world, and that is not the case. And if it were the case, then there would be nothing special about blockchains. It'd just be a repeat of our old systems of cooperation. And we could all forget about that we're building them and go home and give up. So this is really, really not how it works, and I hope this is probably one of the most widespread misconceptions in the space. So how do users actually enforce the rules directly? It sounds kind of weird or like confusing how it could possibly work. Well, the way that users enforce the rules of the chain is that they run a node. And a node is a computer program that has an understanding of what the rules of the blockchain are, and then it constantly audits and verifies the chain to make sure none of the rules are being broken. And if the rules do get broken, they stop them before they happen. So running a node is how users enforce the rules of the chain. And this gives blockchains their fundamental value proposition, this superpower, which is that blockchains enable rules without rulers. So using blockchains, we're able to dissolve this power hierarchy. We're able to remove the need for this trusted, powerful entity in the system. And that enables us, now that rather than trusting in other human beings, to be honest, if we can just trust in cryptography, all of a sudden we can scale our cooperation. We can achieve a social scalability that extends to the entire planet, because everyone can agree on trusting in cryptography and in verifying cryptographic proofs. And now this sounds amazing, but unfortunately there is a catch. And that catch is that even though blockchains achieve very high social scalability, they don't achieve very high technical scalability. basically, technical scalability is the fact that they can't really process that many transactions per unit time, so they can't actually support that many users. This is why, for example, Ethereum is always congested. And to understand why the blockchains are not very technically scalable, you have to understand what's actually happening under the hood inside of a node. So when you're running a full node and you're verifying the chain, you have to download and verify every single transaction that every other user sends. So unfortunately, users are just people, right? They're normal people like you and me. They have a certain amount of bandwidth that they can download transaction data, and they have a certain amount of computer power that they can use to verify these transactions. And so that sets a finite limit, an upper bound to the throughput of the chain. If you exceed that, then all of a sudden the users can't verify the chain anymore, and you lose the property of social scalability. So a lot of chains, when they're, quote, scaling, what they're doing is they're increasing the node requirements. So if you increase node requirements, obviously you can run the chain faster and process more transactions, but then end users like you and me, average people, get priced out of the ability to verify the chain. And instead of running a full node, they can run instead a light client. And a light client is basically what it does is it assumes that the validators are honest. It assumes that the validators are honestly enforcing the rules. And even though it's very technically scalable to run a light client, that's not very socially scalable because you're reintroducing this power dynamic and this trust vulnerability by empowering the validators once again. So that's why blockchain scaling is so difficult, is because you have this dilemma between social scalability and technical scalability, where you want to increase the throughput of the chain so you can support lots and lots of users, but that's what we all want. We all want mass adoption. We all want everyone to be able to use the same chain. But the problem is that in this current paradigm, we can't do that without also sacrificing social scalability. And social scalability is the whole reason we're building blockchains in the first place. This is why, when Bitcoin forked, the Bitcoin fork that survived was the one that maintained social scalability. And it would seem like, and that's why basically we had this promise of, hey, we can rebuild this like a trust network in cryptography that scales to the entire planet. But then, actually, it turns out we can't really get there because we need to achieve both technical and social scalability at the same time to actually make that practical. And that's the sort of the state of things. That's where things were up until 2018 and 19, when a Galaxy Brain dude named Mustafa Al-Bassam, who was just up here, published 2 papers that described an entirely new way of building blockchains, which are called modular blockchains. And at their core, modular blockchains defined a new way for people to verify blockchains in a way that can be both technically and socially scalable. And the way that it works is that, unlike in a monolithic chain, we have to download every transaction and verify every single one. In a modular blockchain, you just have to download a tiny sample of the transaction data, and then you can verify a proof that the transactions are valid, that they followed the rules of the chain. So in doing this, you're able to verify lots and lots and lots of transactions that the other users are sending, but without having to do so much work. And really importantly, this technique scales sublinearly to an increase in transactions. So it fundamentally solves this sort of dilemma and results in the whole purpose of this talk is this new type of node called a light node, which has the security and decentralization properties of a full node, but it has the technical scalability of a light client. And so light nodes are the core innovation of modular blockchains. And they're how we can actually have blockchains that scale both technically and socially at the same time. And you can see this represented in the specs for a Celestia light node as compared to nodes in other ecosystems. In many cases, it's orders of magnitude less resources are required to verify the chain. And that brings me to a really important value of the entire modular blockchain movement, not just Celestia, which is that we believe anyone, anywhere, should be able to verify the blockchain. They should be able to run a light node and enforce the rules of the chain themselves. And that's why we have targeted the specs of the Celestia light node to be able to be run on a smartphone. Because a smartphone is the most widely adopted device in the world. Estimated 5.3 billion people worldwide own a smartphone. So if every one of those people can run a light node, then we can achieve a maximum degree of social scalability. All those 5.3 billion people could be connected together in a cryptographic network of trust. And so we could, with modular blockchains, actually achieve this holy grail of scaling cooperation to the entire planet. Now, again, that's a really big vision, and I firmly believe in it. But I'm not going to lie to you, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So at the protocol level, this is sort of a call to action to all the protocol engineers and builders out there. There's a ton of work that we still need to do to make light nodes actually technically possible. I mean, they are technically possible. We have Celestia light nodes working on testnets and soon on our mainnet when we launch. But there's so many other layers to the stack. We need better proof systems. All these things listed here are going to be really crucial to be built out to make this vision a reality. So there's a lot of engineering still to be done. And there's also a component of friction, right? We need to make it really, really easy and simple for users to run light nodes. And current status quo is that you have to open a terminal window and do command line, and that is way too much friction for the average person, as you know. And so if that remains that way, we're not really going to get very far in terms of adoption. But fortunately, there's amazing people like Josh on our team who have been building desktop apps and hopefully in the future mobile apps so that it can be just a few clicks between starting up a light node. And I think that's really where we need to start moving towards. And the last thing is I think we need to even embed light nodes into user-facing infrastructure like wallets. And that way, in the same way that we can have, the privacy community has this notion of private by default, in the modular blockchain community, we can have a notion and a value of verify by default. And lastly, we actually need to make light nodes into a meme. So light nodes need to be embedded deeply within our culture, as for those of us who believe in modular blockchains. Running a light node should become a habit. It should become a ritual, even a rite of passage for being part of what we're building and what we're doing. And if you haven't yet run a light node, we have a booth outside, and we're also teaching a workshop tomorrow. And so I invite you to join and give it a try and be baptized in the modular movement. So the amazing thing is that the meme is working. As you guys have seen, people are actually putting the light node to use in practice, running it in all different kinds of places in the world, on planes, on boats, at the pyramids. People have been running them on all kinds of devices, Kindles, gaming consoles, and even, in this instance, on their car. And so it's cool. There's a momentum. There's this cultural momentum that we have, and we need to keep it going. And so I really hope that you guys do your part and participate. Now, you might be wondering, though, okay, this is really cool, but why should I care? Well, the answer is that, and why should I care, and why should I go through the effort of running a light node? It's a busy world. I only have so much time in my day. Why should I bother? Well, the answer is you should care, and you should make an effort to run a light node, because we're living in a world where our rights and our freedoms are being increasingly infringed upon by people in power. And even if it's done with the best intentions, it's really dangerous, and it's something that we shouldn't tolerate. And so we need to run light nodes as a way to sort of stand up for our own rights and build a system where we can't be taken advantage of. And we've seen this all over the place. We've seen, in Canada, the financial system was used as a way to suppress protests by freezing people's bank accounts. We've seen with Twitter files and a lot of recent news that Facebook and lots of social media companies have been censoring information because of government requests. There's also widespread surveillance on the internet. And I don't think it's a coincidence that trust in our institutions is at all-time lows. I think people are waking up to the realization that the people in power don't always have our best interests at heart. And the amazing thing is that, our ancestors, when they had to defend their rights and their freedom, they had to pick up weapons and go to war, right? They had to put their lives on the line and fight for what they believed in. And the beautiful thing is that with light nodes, we have a peaceful alternative. We can build a new sort of like fabric of society and build our own rules and build our rights in a way that can't be compromised. And we don't even have to like fight. It's just software, it's just code. So, and last but not least, like, it's not just about defending your rights. Running light nodes is an opportunity for us to take this next leap to large-scale cooperation and coordination, rebuild a network of cryptographic trust on which we can build a more peaceful, prosperous, and democratic society. And so I actually happen to have this is kind of complicated. I happen to have a node on my phone right here running. Hopefully you guys can see that. And so what I want all of you to do with me is if you could reach into your pocket or your bag and pull out your phone and hold it in the air with me. Let's go, guys. Put them up. I want you to keep them raised. I want you to realize that what you're holding in your hand is not just a phone or a camera or a computer. It's the key to your rights, it's the key to your freedom, and it's the key to a better future for humanity. So thank you very much.